They don't cry in front of you, do not implore. They don't ask you to stay. But that does not mean it did not hurt. When a man loses a woman who touched her real heart, not the one he just wished physically, but the one who marked his soul, his silence becomes a hiding place. Deborah Tannen, a linguist and scholar of human relations, explains that men early on were taught to protect themselves from their own feeling. But there are emotions that, even stuffy, scream inside. And when the woman leaves, that's where they explode away from any witness. You may never see. Maybe he keeps posting, smiling, pretending a tranquility he doesn't feel. But this is an armor. Because men, when they lose a woman who really made a difference, don't go ahead. They just walk hurt, trying to prove to the world and to themselves that continue in control. Deborah shows that while women tend to elaborate their pain emotionally talking, men do the opposite, internalize. But these 5 emotions they hide are like ghosts that haunt their attitudes. And that's why so many are angry, others add, and some even try to replace too fast. Because losing a woman who truly marked their hearts is not just an end, it's an open wound that most don't even know how to appoint. They don't know how to say, she was different. They don't know how to admit that they lost something they didn't even know how valuable was too late. Deborah Tannen says that for man, demonstrating pain can be interpreted as weakness, and this hurts his sense of identity. So he doesn't show. He disguises. But don't forget, this introduction is about what no one sees, the internal drama that begins after the end, especially when the woman in question was more than a body or a company. It was understanding, it was shelter, it was true admiration. And this, according to Deborah, is what most emotionally impacts man. Not physical absence, but the emotional loss of being really seen and valued. And it is in this emptiness that these silent emotions are born, and they control the way it relates to everything later. Get ready to dive into a territory where almost no one dares to enter, the invisible side of male pain. Let's reveal the 5 emotions they hide, not because they don't feel, but because they were taught to believe that you feel weak. Understanding these emotions, you will see that behind the silence, there is a heart that screams, a heart that often just wanted you to know that your absence hurt more than he had ever had the courage to say. If you've been this woman, or if you are still trying to understand his silence, this video will reveal much more than words they could ever. Because when a woman really marks a man, he doesn't follow as before. He just learns to live with what he has lost, and inside it something never is the same again. The silence after her, when a woman leaves, and leaves deep marks, the first shield a man raises is silence. But it is not a silence of those who forgot. It is a silence of those who do not know how to express the pain. Deborah Tannen teaches that in the male emotional structure, silence can function as a way of maintaining dignity, or what he believes to be dignity. He is not comfortable to put in words what he is feeling because he has learned that the emotional is a dangerous territory, almost prohibited for men. This silence, however, is dense. He carries memories, regrets, scenes that repeat in looping in his head. That last conversation, the way she looked, the message he did not respond, the touch he ignored. All of this comes to light in the silence he tries to use as a shield, but becomes an emotional prison. And it is precisely at this moment that the first hidden emotion is born, the guilt, a fault that he does not admit, but that erodes. Because deep down, he knows he stopped valuing while he still had. Deborah Tannen states that men tend to see conversations as confrontations and not as bridges. Therefore, in many relationships, they move away before understanding the dimension of what they were losing. And when the woman decides to leave, he is caught off guard. Not because I didn't know there was something wrong, but because you couldn't hear or interpret what she tried to show with attitudes, silences, and subtle words. And when he realizes what he lost, time no longer comes back. The second emotion he hides is the injured pride. Because even missing her, he resists giving his arm a twist. To admit that this woman was special, he will keep the pose. He will tell himself that he did what was right, that she was not all that, but inside it is in pieces. Deborah points out that in affective relationships, the loss of emotional status, of being chosen, the admired, and affect male ego more deeply than any fight or separation itself. What man feels is not just missing, it is a hole in identity. It is the absence of a presence that made him feel a real man, not because she inflates her ego, but because she saw him in layers he hid. And this feeling of being truly understood and losing it becomes an inner scar. He may even get involved with others, but none will be that, because that woman marked something deeper. She played a part of him that he never knew how to name it, but now misses every day. And so the silence continues. At the parties, in the new meetings, in the solitary dawn. It's the silence of someone who wants to show that he has overcome. But deep down, he still expects her to come back, even if it is just to say, I missed you too. But as Deborah Tannen teaches us, men were educated to hide, and hiding in this case means suffering alone, even when everything inside are begging for connection. The loneliness he does not admit. After silence and guilt comes something that few men have the courage to admit: emotional loneliness, not the one that resolves with physical company or with bar friends, but the loneliness that arises the moment he realizes that he lost the only person with whom he could be himself without masks. Deborah Tannen points out that, unlike women, men rarely build profound emotional support networks. They get used to having only one person as an emotional basis. And when this woman goes away, his world collapses. But inside, this loneliness is not just absence. It is a void that settles in the small details of everyday life. He feels when he returns home and no longer has her voice on the phone, when it lies on the bed and the next pillow is always intact, when you get good news and realize that you have no one else to divide. Because as much as he says he is fine, that he is enjoying life, the truth is that no smile has the same taste, no conversation has the same brightness, and that consumes it inside. The fourth hidden emotion is the suffocated longing. Deborah explains that men often repress their emotions to protect their image. They will not send messages saying, I miss you. But that doesn't mean they don't feel. They feel, and deeply. But instead of expressing, they avoid. They try to bury their longing under new experiences, new bodies, new habits. But none of these distractions is enough to erase the impact of a woman who marked not only life, but his heart. And the more he tries to hide this longing, the more it grows. He remembers the small gestures, the way she moved her hair, the way she worried about things that no one else noticed. He even tries to hate her at some point, just to see if he forgets faster. But hatred does not stick, because what he feels is not angry. It is missing. It is loss. And that is the emotion he denies the most. Because admitting longing would be to confess that she was irreplaceable. And that, for his ego, is too difficult. Deborah Tannen states that when a woman touches a man's most humane part, she becomes a reference. All the others after her are comparisons disguised. He may even try to fool himself, say it is better that it is free. But in silence, he seeks traces of her in others. The similar laugh, the strong opinion, the sincere look, and that hurts him, because each resemblance only reinforces what he has lost. And what he has lost this time, there is no way to replace. Deep down, he doesn't want another woman's like. He just wanted time to come back, that he had heard better, who had understood the signs, that had chosen different. But now the longing remains, and loneliness, both hidden behind a seemingly normal routine. But you, who has been at his heart, know, when a man loses a woman who really marked him, he may continue to live, but a part of him gets stuck in the past, just in the part where you were, the anger that hides fragility. When a man cannot deal with what he feels, he protects himself with what he knows: anger. This is the fifth hidden emotion, not because he hates you, but because it is the only way he finds it, not to dive into the emotional abyss that longing, loneliness, and guilt opened inside it. Deborah Tannen explains that for many men, expressing pain makes them feel exposed, fragile, and vulnerable. Therefore, they turn pain into irritation, in injured pride, in coldness, because being cold in this context seems safer than confessing that you still love, and that is why he can become indifferent. You can act with contempt. It may even tease you, as if you have never loved you. But behind this armor is a man who does not know what to do with his own loss. And here, the great mistake lives. Many women believe he already forgets that he moved on as if nothing had happened. But the truth is that this behavior is a defense. One way to say, I was also injured, but I will not demonstrate. This anger is not just against you. She is mainly against himself. He hates himself for letting you escape. If you blame yourself for not saying what you needed, for not being surrendered when it was time, for throwing hard when it should have gone. Deborah shows that this internal contradiction among what man feels and what he demonstrates is what sabotages his relationships most. He wants to go back, but doesn't know how. He wants to heal, but doesn't know how to ask for help. And then it closes, shut up, and suffers in silence. Often this anger is also projected in the world. He begins to treat other women with coldness, with suspicion, because deep down, he no longer wants to risk feeling what he felt for you. He convinces himself that he doesn't need anyone else, but in fact he is trying to prevent the same emptiness from repeating. And here is one of the greatest lessons. When a woman marks a real man, she changes the way he relates to love. He is not the same again. He becomes harder, not by force, but out of fear. And even if he tries to look entirely, something will always deliver. The distant gaze, the change in behavior, the absence of depth with others. Because when the right woman leaves, she takes with her the most authentic version he has ever been. And what's left is just what he can pretend to survive. Deborah Tannen shows us that true communication goes beyond words. It is in what is not said. And in that case, his silence shouts. If he didn't speak, if he didn't beg, if he didn't run after, it wasn't because you didn't be worth it. It was because he didn't know how to deal with what he felt. And now he carries 5 emotions that destroy him in silence: guilt, wounded pride, loneliness, longing, and anger. All this because one day he had you and couldn't keep you. And that, for a man who felt invincible, is the kind of loss that time may even camouflage, but never erasing. The man who changes after her. When a woman leaves deep marks on a man, something inside him changes forever. Maybe he never say that out loud. Perhaps it is not even completely aware of the transformation. But it happens, silent, gradual, and definitive. Deborah Tannen points out that, unlike women who process the end through dialogue and emotional sharing, men internalize and reformulate their future attitudes based on unresolved pain. That is, the loss of a significant woman becomes a new way of existing in love. It begins to create invisible rules. Avoid opening so fast. It no longer delivers feelings easily. The affection becomes caution. Delivery becomes a strategy. And fear becomes control. This does not make it cold, but protected. He starts to hide inside him so as not to risk losing again. What he lived with you became a camouflaged trauma, not of violence, but of intensity. Because feeling a lot and losing has become a sign of weakness to him, and no one wants to be weak in the heart itself. And the most painful is that often the next woman pays the price. She relates to a man who is no longer whole, a man who lives in half, who tries to like it, but can't surrender as before. Deborah explains that this is because his emotional language was paralyzed in time. The woman who actually touched him is still present, not physically, but as an impossible parameter to ignore. He compares, even unintentionally. He misses, even denying it. And even though he tries to live new loves, something inside him remains anchored in the past. Because pain is not expressed, becomes behavior. It may seem unattainable, but it's just trying not to revive the wound. It may seem superficial, but it is just avoiding too deep diving. The fear of losing again became greater than the desire to feel intensely. And so, He lives with blockages that he doesn't even understand, with scars that no one sees. This is why often he runs away from women who look like you, which have the same depth, that look in the eye with the same truth, because he recognizes the danger, not being deceived, but of falling in love again as it was with you. And that, for him, would be reliving everything he couldn't overcome. Deborah shows us that men suffer, yes, but they suffer in a way that the world does not realize, because their suffering is hidden, controlled, and often directed against themselves. The woman who really marked a man is not just a memory. It is a division of time. There is the before her and after her. He can even laugh, love, try again, but that look he had when he was with her, that glow in his eyes, and that peace in touch, they don't come back easily. And if you go El Tom, it is because he finally learned that hiding emotions does not protect him, only keeps him away from living something as true as he lived with that woman. When he faces what he felt, a moment comes, sometimes too late, where the man who lost an unforgettable woman finds himself face to face with everything he tried to avoid. Her living memory. It can be an old photo, a memory that someone mentions by chance, or even an unexpected reunion, and suddenly everything comes back. The smell, the voice, the eyes, the laughter. Deborah Tannen states that even when it seems overcome, the emotional past reappears when least expected, because what was true never dissolves. It only hides until the next wave of lucidity. This moment is usually silent but brutal. He looks at her and realizes that nothing filled the space she occupied. It was not the passing meetings, nor the empty hugs. He realizes that her absence has never been overcome, just ignored. And if he's more mature, perhaps for the first time in years he can admit it. He still feels. He still carries parts of it inside him. And that's where the emotional game changes. Not by spoken words, but by the strength of what was never really closed. It is also at this point that he needs to make the most difficult decision. Keep denying, or face what has always been there. Deborah teaches that men tend to need time and distance to name what they feel, and when they finally get the weight of it, transforms them. Some have the courage to look for this woman and say, I understood everything too late. Others just suffer silent, with the regret of not having acted while there was time. But everyone, without exception, feels, and feel overwhelmingly. If he meets her again, the gaze delivers everything, because the eyes don't lie when the heart screams. Even if he tries to keep the posture, the emotion leaks. She realizes. She always knew, because deep down, the woman who really marked a man's life knows that something between them has been suspended in time. Something was never resolved. It has never been completely said. And it is in this shared silence that inhabits the most painful truth. He loved her more than he showed, and suffered more than she ever imagined. But there is not always a return. Sometimes time separates, choices change the paths, and reunion does not bring reconciliation but closing. And yet, it's powerful. Because as Deborah says, put in words what was felt, even late, can free. You can cure. It can turn silence into learning. And for man, admitting these emotions is finally allowing himself to feel without judging himself. It is recognizing that love has not made him weak, but made him human. For you, a woman who marked someone deeply, maybe he never says. You may never hear what he really felt, but know, surely, that the impact you had was real. You stayed in it. You became a story. And no matter how long it goes, how many others appear, or how many silences he keeps, you were the woman who changed everything. And he knows that, even in silence. He knew everything, too late. In the end, he knew. I always knew, from the first moment you left and his world was too silent. Since the day he looked at his cell phone, wishing to send you a message, but preferred to pretend pride instead of confessing longing. Deborah Tannen reminds us that men live this kind of love as who tries to attach the air into the lungs. For a while they think they can, until the chest hurts. And when they finally let go, it's too late. He will never forget how you made him feel, the lightness of your presence, the warmth of your attention, the way you saw it beyond the defenses. This is not twice, and he knows. Life will follow, the days will pass, but every woman after you will only be comparison. Not because he still loves you the same way, but because you were the reference of everything he only learned to value after losing. And as much as he has hidden all this behind jokes, silences, pride, and new stories, what he lived with you was real, so real that it became part of his identity. You might have followed in a head of pain, believing it was forgotten, but now you know it wasn't. His value was not in the way he treated you at the end, but in the trail you left when it left. Deborah would say, there are absences that speak more than any presence, and yours to him said everything. So if you have already blamed yourself to leave, know that you were not weak. You were brave. You were real love. You were the type of woman who transforms, which reveals to man parts of his own that he had never seen. And when you left, he understood, though late, which is losing something that is not bought, does not force himself, does not replace himself. A rare connection, an entire feeling, a love that marked. Now, if this history, it touched you, if you saw yourself here at some point, don't let it die in silence. Share this video with those who need to hear this truth. Like, subscribe to the channel, and especially comment here. Have you ever been this woman? Have you ever felt this silence? Or do you feel that you are still remembered, even if he never said? Your story matters. Your voice matters. And together, we make sense to all this. Because behind the silence of a man, there is almost always the echo of an unforgettable woman. Every woman who has really loved deserves to know this. The silence of a man after the end doesn't always mean coldness. Often it is poorly digested pain. It is love that could not communicate. It is a loss that only revealed over time. Deborah Tannen shows us that male language, when it comes to deep emotions, is marked by omission, not the absence of feelings. And that's the most revealing point. What he didn't say said everything. And you were never insignificant. You were the exception, and he knew that, too late. Throughout this video, we plunged into the 5 emotions that many men hide when they lose a woman who really marked their lives. Guilt, wounded pride, loneliness, longing, and anger. Each one acts as a reflection of the importance you had. Therefore, never interpret silence as contempt. Sometimes he is just a muffled scream of someone who did not learn to say, I loved you more than I showed. But as important as understanding what they feel is to remember what you deserve. You are not here to be remembered only when it is late. You are here to be recognized, respected, and valued in life, with presence, with words and attitudes. If a man could not see this, it is not you who lost, it is him. And even if he realizes later, it doesn't mean that you should come back, but to follow with more conscience, more self-love, and more clarity of its value. Because you are not just a remarkable memory in someone's life, you are whole, and it deserves to live a love that knows how to see everything you are now, not only when it becomes absence. Deborah Tannen reminds us that understanding the language of the other is important, but telling our truths firmly is essential. And your truth, woman, must always be, I deserve to be loved in full, not in silence, not with doubt, but with presence and courage. If this video has touched you, it is because you are in a moment of awakening, and it awakens who has tired of decreasing themselves to be noted. Awakens those who understand that love should not be a battlefield, but a safe place. May this content strengthen you, illuminate you, and remember, you are not alone. And the more you understand yourself, the less you accept crumbs disguised as affection. If you got here, congratulations. This shows that you really value yourself and are willing to better understand male behavior so as not to fall into the same emotional traps. I want to invite you to leave a comment by saying, I watched until the end, so I can get to know you better and know who is really committed to strengthening yourself emotionally and building healthier relationships. And of course, check now if you are already subscribed to the channel. If you are not yet, Click the subscribe button so as not to lose the next content that will open your eyes even more. If this video helped you, leave your like so that more women also receive this message. And share it with a friend who deserves to break free from relationships that only suck your energy and attention. Most women only realize that they are attached to a destructive emotional cycle when they are already emotionally exhausted. In the first comment set, I left the link to a complete playlist with content that can open your eyes before it happens to you. Watch now. We will meet in the next video.